Chapter 6. 7. Earthquakes. As we reflect on the prophecy of our Lord Jesus Christ in the Gospel of Luke, where he warned, "Nation will rise up against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be great earthquakes along with famines, and epidemics in various places." We are reminded of the significance of natural disasters in the fulfillment of end-time prophecy. In particular, earthquakes have been on the rise in recent times, causing widespread devastation and loss of life. However, before we jump to conclusions, it is important to consider the limitations of our data. The systematic recording of earthquakes only began in the late 19th century, and it wasn't until the establishment of the International Seismological Association, in 1901, that efforts to standardize data collection were made. The Richter scale, introduced by Charles Richter in 1935, further enhanced our ability to measure earthquake magnitudes. With the advent of technology and real-time communication, we are now able to detect and record earthquakes more accurately than ever before. Despite these advances, there are still limitations to our understanding. So, what can we conclude from the data we have? According to an NBC News report between 2004 to 2014, there were 18 earthquakes with magnitudes of 8.0, or greater, across the world. That's an increase of 265% above the average rate of the previous century, which saw 71 great quakes, according to a report to the annual meeting of the Geological Society of America in Vancouver, British Columbia, 2014. It is also interesting to note that a United States Geological Survey article titled, "Why Are We Having So Many Earthquakes?" concludes, when we look at long-term records since about 1900, we see a pattern emerge. On average, we expect about 16 major earthquakes per year, including one with a magnitude of 8.0, or greater. In the past 40 to 50 years, we have exceeded this average about a dozen times. In 2010, there were 23 major earthquakes recorded, the highest total in recent history. As we contemplate the impact of earthquakes, we are reminded of the recent tragedy in Turkey and Syria, where over 55,000 lives were lost in a 7.8 magnitude quake. It is clear that natural disasters continue to be a significant challenge for our world, and we must work together to reduce their impact and support those affected by them. In conclusion, while there are limitations to our understanding of earthquake trends, it is clear that they have been on the rise in recent times. As we continue to study and monitor these events, let us also remember the human impact these disasters bring. People are more than numbers in statistical data. We must never forget that. Again, the question is simple: on average, can we say that since records began, that we're experiencing a steady increase in the number of global earthquakes? Grab that pen and paper again and mark either yes, no, or partially. 8. Pestilence. Allow me to draw your attention to a term that we have all come to know intimately in recent times: pestilence. This old word refers to a scourge of fatal epidemic or pandemic diseases that have ravaged our world, from localized outbreaks to global plagues. As we delve into the annals of human history, we cannot ignore the multitude of epidemics and pandemics that have wreaked havoc on our societies. From the infamous Black Death to the devastating Spanish flu, from the Ebola outbreak to the current COVID-19 pandemic, it seems that the world has been plagued by disease time and time again. What is most perplexing is that despite the tremendous advances in medicine, technology, and healthcare, these global diseases are increasing in frequency and severity. One would assume that as our knowledge and expertise grow, we would be better equipped to combat these scourges. However, the opposite is true. As evidence of this grim reality, the National Library of Medicine lists 7 critical epidemics and pandemics that have occurred in just the past 2 decades, and distressingly, 3 of them are still ongoing. Let's look at the list. 1. SARS-CoV-1, 2002 to 2004. 2. Influenza H1N1, swine flu, 2009 to 2010. 3. MERS, CoV infection, 2012 and ongoing. 4. Ebola virus, 2013 to 2016. 5. Zika virus, 2015 to 2016. 6. COVID-19, 2020 and ongoing. And 7. H5N1 and H7N9 avian flu, 2023 and ongoing. You can see, we are faced with a troubling paradox. Despite our advances, we are still vulnerable to the scourge of pestilence. When you consider the list that covers all the outbreaks in 100 years, up to 2002, you will notice there were only 4 major occurrences, compared to 7 in the last 20 years alone. Which included 1. Russian typhus, 1918 to 2022. 2. Influenza pandemic, 1957 to 1958. 3. Hong Kong flu, 1968 to 1969. And 4. HIV, AIDS, 1981 and ongoing. I think you'll agree we've had more than our fair share of pestilence over the last few years. Those who know Christian prophecy will not be surprised by this trend. Our Lord Jesus Christ, in His infinite wisdom, warned us of these very events in the prophecy recorded in Luke's Gospel, which we considered earlier. But there is another prophecy, one that has not yet come to pass, but clearly indicates the direction in which the world is heading. In the book of Revelation, we are presented with the harrowing image of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, with Death himself riding a pale horse, wielding deadly plagues and pestilences that will claim the lives of 1/4 of the world's population. This amounts to an unfathomable 2 billion souls. The question must be asked, can such devastation and death be wrought by disease in our own time? The answer is an unequivocal yes. Consider the Ebola epidemic that ravaged West Africa. We were blessed that the outbreak was contained. It is frightening to consider that the World Health Organization reported that the average case fatality for Ebola is around 50%, with some past outbreaks having fatality rates ranging between 25 to 90%. At a 50% mortality, if this virus had become pandemic, the world would have seen an unbelievable 4 billion deaths. Let me assure you, when the Bible prophesied 2 billion fatalities, it was being conservative. Thankfully this never happened, but we're heading in that direction for sure. Science and biblical prophecy concur on this matter. A recent study by the Gavi Vaccine Alliance has suggested that there is a significant risk of extreme pandemics like COVID-19 in the future, which could increase threefold in the coming decades. And climate change is only exacerbating this risk. For those who have eyes to see and ears to hear, it is clear that war, famine, pestilence, earthquakes, and climate change are all inextricably linked. It's very rare we get one without the other. And so, the question is this: is the world experiencing an ever-increasing number of epidemics and pandemics as never before? Take up that pen and paper again and mark either yes, no, or partially. 9. A river runs dry. This is quite an interesting and unusual prophecy that is unfolding right before our eyes. And it concerns the river Euphrates. So, let's take a look at the river and the prophecy that relates to it. You may know, the Euphrates is one of the longest, oldest and most historically significant rivers in Western Asia. Its importance is so great that it was mentioned in the 2nd chapter of Genesis, where it is described as one of the 4 rivers that flowed out of Eden to water the garden. It is the longest river in the region, being 1,740 miles long, and in places 1.7 miles wide. It is a beast of a river by anyone's imagination. Indeed, without the Euphrates, some of the world's oldest civilizations, such as the Sumerians, Mesopotamians, Akkadians, Assyrians, and Babylonians would not have existed. It is no exaggeration to say that the Euphrates has played a crucial role in the development of human civilization, and it continues to be a vital resource to this day. But despite its historical importance and enduring presence, the Euphrates is not immune to the effects of climate change. Rising temperatures and changing weather patterns have already begun to impact this great river, and there are concerns that its flow is dwindling drastically. With this in mind, let me draw your attention to the year 90 AD, when the Apostle John wrote a prophecy in the book of Revelation, declaring that the great river Euphrates would dry up, allowing the armies from the east to cross over dry land, no doubt somewhere in Iraq, as they rushed towards the Battle of Armageddon. It was an inconceivable thing to say in his time. But today, in the year of our Lord 2023, we are seeing this prophecy begin to unfold against all odds. As we approach end times, it is important to notice that Iraq is currently suffering from the devastating effects of climate change. In 2022, Al Jazeera reported that Iraq is now the fifth most vulnerable nation to climate change fallout in the world today. And that, lower rainfall and salinity have rendered the land less fertile, with dust storms becoming more frequent. This is an unbelievable state of affairs. The Euphrates and Tigris rivers were once the lifeblood of this region, known as the Fertile Crescent. It can no longer claim this title any longer as water levels significantly decline, year upon year. The UN World Food Programme reports that almost 90% of rain-fed crops, mostly wheat and barley, have failed this season in Iraq. This is a tragic turn of events for a country that once produced almost 8.7 million tons of wheat in 2019 to 2020. The United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, UNICEF, unsurprisingly reports, in Iraq, during the 2020 to 2021 rainfall season, the second driest in the last 40 years, there has been a reduction of water flow in the Tigris by 29%, and the Euphrates by 73%. The Water Resources Ministry in Iraq also claims that the continuing loss of water from these rivers could turn the country into a land without rivers by 2040. It is interesting to note that UNICEF are less optimistic, predicting Iraq will be almost dry by 2030. As if things couldn't get any worse, during the 80s and 90s, Turkey built a series of dams along the Euphrates, which wasn't an issue back then. However, as rainfall has declined over the decades, less water inevitably passes through the sluice gates to those further downstream. None of this helps Iraq. But back to our prophecy, and the question is this: is the river Euphrates drying up regardless of the cause? Take up your pen and paper again and mark either yes, no, or partially.